Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, and Virginia, WynnBET is now live in all these states, and the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas has finally landed in online sports betting and casino play. From boosted parlays to live in-game odds on every major sport, WynnBET gives you the tools to win. Sign up today for your risk-free $1,000 sports bet. Download the WynnBET app or visit wynnbet.com to start winning. The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. Christmas is ruined. Sam, how are you doing?
By Otto Porter Jr. of all people, Christmas is ruined. I'm doing all right. That was, here's what I'll say about that game that we all watched on Christmas a couple days ago. It was a phenomenal basketball game between two elite basketball teams, and right up until like 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, all was swell. You know, it was a close game. I think the Warriors either had it tied or were up by 2 points at that point, but it could have gone either way. And then Otto Porter ruined it all in the last 2.5 minutes with one of the most bizarro stretches to close out. Ice in his veins, closed out the Suns on Christmas and sort of ruined it for us. And now as we look ahead real quick too, also, I know we're going to recap this game, but just preparing ourselves, we're going to break down all the news that's happening to the Suns because it's changing hour by hour, minute by minute. And we prepare ourselves for possibly what's shaping up to be one of the more bizarre weeks of the season for the Suns. Yeah. It's going to start looking really weird really fast.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And it's funny with Otto Porter, like at a certain point, the amount of attention Steph Curry draws, and like the Suns do well guarding Steph Curry, but that often means that other guys are going to be open. And Otto Porter hitting a wide open three, that's like, okay, that hurts. Like the Suns are playing well. You know, Booker's struggling. We'll talk about all of it in a second. But then Otto Porter hits a fadeaway mid-range too.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, well,
what it was.
This is not meant to be. Like, we are not winning this game if that's the kind of shots that Otto Porter is hitting. And credit to them because I think, you know, traps are something we talk about a lot on this podcast and how teams deal with traps. There's been no team in the history of the NBA trapped more, that have their ball handlers trapped more than the Golden State Warriors. And there's been no team in the history of the NBA that handles traps better than them. And that's the advantage of having a guy like Draymond Green who can catch it in space and find guys consistently. So, yeah, they did a really good job at the end of that game. And it takes guys stepping up and hitting shots to win games when two really great teams play against each other. And I think you can see where the Suns would struggle in a 7-game series. You know, a lot of this season is building up to how these two teams will play in the NBA playoffs. And Sam, I did a lot of trying to convince Suns fans that the team that the Suns needed to be measured against is the Warriors and not the other way around. Because as much as, you know, being ahead of them by 1 game in the standings means something, to me, it basically meant nothing. And then the team that had the 2-time MVP, including the only unanimous MVP selection, and the coach that coached them to 5 NBA finals and arguably the defensive player of the year, that seems like the team that the Suns need to be measured against. And I think maybe Suns fans are starting to realize that after the Christmas Day game, right?
I think slowly they are realizing that. Obviously, you should have realized that all along. The thing about the Warriors is I don't think any of us have ever told you it's not their talent necessarily that's intimidating. We know Curry's amazing. We know Draymond is does what he does impeccably, but they played that game without Jordan Poole. They played that game without Andrew Wiggins. Like you said, it took tough shots by Otto Porter at the end to win. There's a certain differentiation that goes on between trapping Steph Curry and forcing their guys into tough shots, which you live with, versus, you know, allowing their guys to get easy shots at the rim, which was a lot of where the Suns defense fell apart in that game, and we can break that down a little bit more in depth too. But it's not their talent necessarily that's intimidating. Their effort was fantastic. I mean, the Suns just got out-hustled all game. The rebounding effort was pathetic. The defense from the Warriors was phenomenal. Obviously Draymond, but another guy, Gary Payton II, had a sensational game.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a talent thing. That was just a wanting it thing.
Yeah.
So if you're the Suns, there are a lot of lessons to learn about just shoring up the little things on both ends. And this is the team. I mean, this is the team. There is no other team in the league that you have to be prepared for. So it's like we could spend a lot of time talking about this game, and I think maybe some people are already over it. They just want to move on to whatever's next. But it's like, whatever bullshit game they're going to play without half the roster against Memphis tonight, it doesn't fucking matter. None of it fucking matters. Golden State matters. So you need to focus on this matchup above all else, because above all, the Suns just did not bring an effort that was worthy of winning that game on Christmas. And that's what they need to fix.
If the Warriors can survive by essentially putting Gary Payton on Devin Booker and not trapping, not switching, just hounding him with a single defender, the rest of the team becomes a lot easier to defend. Because, as much as Booker struggled there, I do think there are things that the Suns can do to free him up against Gary Payton. And I think it's something that happened in the playoffs as well with Patrick Beverley. It's a good example. It's a similar defense that they're playing there. And the Suns could do better now that they're prepared, but the Warriors came into this game, I mean, truthfully, just with a better game plan against the Suns. And I think two things stood out to me. Gary Payton II, who's just been playing very well this season. And look, offensively, if he can hit wide open threes, it's a disaster for any team that's playing against them, because the idea is playing him off the floor, and if you can't, then you can't. That's a huge deal. But secondly, Draymond is just so clearly the smartest defender in the NBA, and just basketball IQ-wise stands out against essentially every single player on the Suns outside of basically Chris Paul, probably. I mean, it's just hit the level. And they do a fascinating thing with Draymond Green where their switching defensively is so next level that Draymond can almost play a zone. He can almost just guard an area on the floor, and the Golden State perimeter defenders are capable of switching out to any players that head up to the three-point line. It's almost like they play the opposite of a box and one. It's like a single zone defender with four man defenders that can just switch onto perimeter players. And that means that it's essentially impossible to take Draymond out of the action defensively, which is a huge deal when they have a defender that's as good as Draymond. You essentially cannot game plan to take him away from the action because they're capable of switching so smartly off the ball that Draymond will constantly be in the mix. And that's going to be something I think the Suns have to deal with, because it's sort of a new style of defense that really I've never seen anyone do outside of the Warriors. And it's going to be fascinating to see. I really hope we get a 7-game series here because that would likely mean Western Conference Finals, first of all, for both of these teams. But I think coaching-wise, it's going to be a fascinating chess match to see what they do.
I mean, I would like for the Jazz to just take them out in the second round.
Obviously.
So I don't have to think about that, but it's not going to happen. So yeah, you probably need to plan for this being the Western Conference Finals right here, because honestly, I don't really see anyone else. The Jazz even would need to have a pretty miraculous performance, I think, if they ended up faced against the Warriors to win that one. But yeah, with Draymond as a free safety, kind of like you were talking about, he's so good. And the other place where he's so good is just around the basket. We were sharing clips with each other before we recorded today.
Yeah.
And one guy, I'll save the main portion of this piece to you in talking about DeAndre Ayton's performance. So I kind of want to open the floor up to you on that in just a second of overall how you felt about DeAndre Ayton's performance. But as it relates to Draymond, he's so good with just sensing the presence of whether it was DeAndre Ayton, whether it was JaVale McGee, being able to get his body into guys and ensure the offensive rebounds and the defensive rebounds for Golden State was a huge reason why, despite being undersized, they had such a good rebounding performance. One clip that I shared with you was the Suns ran like a 2-1 pistol play between, I think it was Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and the initial action, totally successful, blew right by the initial defense. So then you've got Devin Booker driving to the rim. Kevon Looney shifts over, easy block for him. He gets a hand on it, but at the same exact time, Draymond, it's just instantaneous the way they move on defense to make sure he gets his butt into DeAndre and grabs the defensive rebound. And this was like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, so this was a clutch play right here. But he's doing it all game, and he's bringing a physical edge that for a guy like DeAndre, and this is where I'll open it up to you, DeAndre got buckets in this game. You know, he scored, he sealed. He when they gave it to him in the post, he was efficient. I think he finished 8 for 10.
Yeah.
But this was not one of those games where I would say that DeAndre really nailed the little things and brought the physical edge that you would expect him to, that he needs to, frankly, if you want to win a series against the Warriors. DeAndre only had 7 rebounds in this game, and I would say it felt like a game where he only had 7 rebounds versus his usual 11 or 12. But I know you have a lot to say about this, so I do want to know also how you felt about his performance.
I think that the Suns have played the Warriors 3 times, basically in the last month. So we saw in the first game against the Warriors the level of intensity that DeAndre Ayton needs to bring in order the small ball minutes by the Warriors Draymond is on the floor at center and DeAndre Ayton is at center for the Suns. That needs to be some sort of advantage for the Suns, and in this game it wasn't. And I think so much of the credit goes to the preparation and game plan by Draymond Green, because specifically on the boards, and this is sort of emblematic of the rest of the game entirely, but specifically on the rebounds, the work that the Warriors do prior to the shot going up is what allowed them to out-rebound the Suns, even though they have a distinct size disadvantage. And I think what shines against the Warriors, and this is no disrespect to DeAndre Ayton, because it's just the case with Draymond Green and essentially every center, is the feel and the basketball IQ of Draymond Green compared to DeAndre Ayton, who oftentimes needs to be coached in order to adjust mid-game, whereas Draymond Green is just very prepared and understands the game just at an elite level instantaneously. So the work that they're doing ahead of time, exactly as you described, allowed them to get between DeAndre Ayton and the basket pretty significantly throughout the game. And I think towards the end of the game, something you pointed out when we were talking about it earlier, DeAndre Ayton appeared to have adjusted, and that's likely because of coaching. So I think the feel for the game for DeAndre Ayton is still evolving. It's just not quite there yet when it comes to understanding how they're playing him early in the game and adjusting right away. I think oftentimes it takes somebody like Monty Williams, Chris Paul, or Devin Booker to point certain things out to him to allow him to adjust throughout a game. And I think that's why the Suns were so good throughout the playoffs. You know, they would see how players and teams were playing against them and then adjust pretty dramatically. Very coachable players. But somebody like Chris Paul and Devin Booker often are able to do that in real time, whereas DeAndre Ayton is not quite there yet from what I've seen.
Right. I think that's a good point, by the way, because I just rewatched the game, so it's fresh in my mind. Ayton was locked in for the final stretch. He came in with about 6 minutes left, and I didn't really see any lapses from him on the defensive end. In fact, I saw some really good stuff on the offensive end with him sealing off players so that Chris Paul could get to the basket. Overall, I'm not saying it was a bad game, but it's just when we talk about the intensity level, there was a mismatch that felt noticeable. But on the other hand, I mean, it's never just on one guy, and there's a lot of guys we could talk about in this one. I think, in fact, Suns fans probably want this loss to be pinned mostly on one guy, and we'll get to him eventually. But before we get there were a lot of defensive miscues from other guys, too. I mean, we should make note of the fact that DeAndre's job on Steph Curry, he's still playing in a drop, technically, but he's playing so much higher to the level, almost to the level of the screen than he usually is. It makes his job switching so much more difficult. Or switching. Yes, sometimes he switched, and in fact, when he did switch, I thought he did well, and the other thing the Suns would do is when he switched, they usually brought a help defender, and then they would have to scramble in rotations. And actually, I thought they did a pretty good job with that. But when they sort of just played it more cleanly, which I think they did a lot more of in the first half, DeAndre's in a slight drop. The tagger has a really heightened role of importance there, and sometimes it would be Devin Booker who would fall asleep, and sometimes it would be Chris Paul even who would fall asleep on the back end of the rotation. Yeah. And the thing is, kind of like we were saying at the beginning, look, the Suns obviously came in with the game plan. They defended the initial actions from the Warriors offense really well. They made Steph Curry's life difficult. Curry did not shoot 100 million%. He actually struggled a little bit from the field, and in fact, a couple of those threes shouldn't have counted because they were travels. If the Warriors fans want to complain about the Chris Paul rip-through, you can absolutely complain about the Steph Curry travel three that I guess Harden has mastered the footwork or whatever, but Curry plainly has not. But in spite of that, you understand that the game plan is to take away from Curry as much as you possibly can and force like the scrubs to feed or whatever, but that means trying to get them to take difficult shots. That means taking guys who are traditionally not shooters and forcing them to prove it from the three-point line. You want guys like Gary Payton II to hit threes, which he's been able to do this season, but you want him to prove it in a clutch sort of environment, or even with Otto Porter, which he was able to do at the end of the game. Too often, they were giving up layups. And it doesn't matter how well you play Steph Curry up on the screen. Like you said, he's going to be able to navigate that space, get it into Draymond, and if they can get layups, it doesn't matter if they have 5 fifth graders out on the floor. They're still going to run an efficient offense if they can get layups on you. There were plays, I posted one play on Twitter where the Suns had 3 defenders, and obviously, again, this was right after an offensive rebound for the Warriors. So it was plainly the fact just that it was so demoralizing in the first place to even, you spend 20 seconds, 24 seconds guarding the guy, and then they get another chance. But it was immediately after an offensive rebound. 3 guys were around Steph Curry. JaVale McGee was a few steps back right underneath the rim. He was watching Steph Curry. Nemanja Bjelica snuck under the basket. No one had an eye on him for a full 7 seconds and got the easiest shot of his career because Curry just flipped it over to him. By the time JaVale got a hand up, it was way too late.
Yeah.
And so the concentration has to be perfect.
Right.
It's a really difficult task. The switching that the Suns are doing, it works. It really does. They've got what they've got going on between Crowder, Bridges, Booker, and Cam Johnson when he's in the game as well. You can tell that it throws Steph Curry off sometimes, but that's just the initial action. That's just the first 7 to 10 seconds. You can't put all that work into the first 7 or 10 seconds of the possession only for you to start ball watching and have it all fall apart in the next 5 seconds. And we saw way too much of that on Christmas.
Steph Curry missed 11 threes in this game, and the Warriors offensive rebounded 5 of those. That just can't happen. And I think there's something about Steph Curry's threes that are so demoralizing, similar to like a poster dunk, that often when he launches up something that looks insane, players just turn around and watch to see if it's going to go in. That kind of focus, that kind of watching can't happen because the Warriors are prepared to offensive rebound those, specifically against the Suns and against the teams that have better centers, like the size disadvantage that they have. And I'm going to put that in quotes because it hasn't really played out like that yet. They're prepared to rebound those. And the Suns need to not just turn around and watch the ball go up when Steph launches, because the work that they're doing against him so far has worked. And look, of course he had a lot of points in this game, but he took a lot of shots to get there, and that means that a lot of them didn't go in. And the Suns need to take advantage of the ones that don't go in order to win the game against them.
Be honest with me. So I'm looking at the box score here. Gary Payton, he was amazing, right?
Yeah.
Were it not for Otto Porter's final 2 minutes, I think it would have been clear that Gary Payton was the third best player in that game. Because of those last 2 minutes, I think you can toss it Otto Porter and say he was the fourth best player. But Payton, with his energy plays, breaking up multiple plays, he also hit
offensive
2 standstill threes, offensive rebounds. So he finished with 14 points, 8 rebounds. I mean, is it crazy to say, because I've said this in the past, if Klay comes back and he's not providing 100% of the value that he does on defense, which probabilistically we know he probably won't, I kind of find it hard to see how Klay would have a more impactful performance in the average game, or how he would have had a more impactful performance in last night's game just by shooting threes versus what Gary Payton did. I think there are moral victories maybe in this, which I hate to use, but you got to take what you can get. I mean, the path to improvement, you look at it at first and it's like such a clear foundation that you think the Warriors would be able to build on. But I don't think it's just as simple as you inject Weissman and Clay into this roster and they get better. Now, Wiggins and Poole is different because they've been playing with them all season long.
Yeah.
But I think, you just substitute what Gary Payton just did last night, his 30 minutes for Clay's 30 minutes. I don't necessarily think the team gets any better.
Yeah.
Because of exactly what you were just talking about. They're not as able to capitalize on what happens when teams fall asleep just watching Steph.
Well, yeah.
This is assuming that Clay is not 100% of his full value, which if he gets there, this could very quickly turn out to be an insanely dumb opinion. But we haven't seen him play basketball in 2 years, so we have to wait and see.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a massive caveat on if he's fine. If he comes back and looks like he did before, especially defensively, I think they're very, very, very clearly the best team in the NBA, which, in my opinion, they are right now, even without him. And I think there's two things on that I want to say. A Klay Thompson 3 is not a normal 3. I mean, he can run off of 5 different screens, and that just really screws up your defensive game plans, and then he catches it and shoots it in a split second, and that's just something that makes a massive difference. So offensively, and they'll be better.
And they'll continue to do a million of the guard-to-guard screens, and the difference with Klay, obviously, is that when Peyton's doing it, he can only cut or slip. When Klay's doing it, he can either cut...
He can do everything. Yeah.
Or take the 3. Yes, he can do everything.
He can catch it from mid-range, he can catch it at the rim, like he can do everything.
It's a good point, but hey, if he doesn't have the lift in his knees and he tries to set one of those screens and cuts to the basket like Peyton did, swat the shit out of that, maybe. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, here's the second thing.
It's such uncharted waters for him, is all I'm saying.
When Gary Payton II was off the floor against the Suns and Devin Booker was in the game, they were sending 2 guys at Devin Booker even without the screen. They were just forcing the ball out of Devin Booker's hands. And that allows the Suns to play essentially 4-on-3 offensively. If they have to do that defensively with Klay Thompson on the floor, which remains to be seen, they may not have to do that. Maybe Klay Thompson can do as well against Devin Booker as Gary Payton II can. But if they do have to do that, I think offensively that can work out in the Suns' favor over the course of a game/7-game series, up to 7-game series, depending on offensively how the Suns play in that scenario, because I think they've gotten a lot better at traps, especially with the way that DeAndre Ayton has been playing offensively lately. So it just depends. I think there's an obvious case that if they bring Wiseman back and Wiseman plays a big role against the Suns, that's a huge advantage for the Suns because he's just not quite there yet. But in its 7-game series, I have a feeling Wiseman plays very little. At some point, they'll just go back to what works for them against the Suns, and that's probably not going to be Wiseman over time. So Klay's a different story. I do think that the advantage that they have, if they can hold on to this advantage, which I think Devin Booker tends to figure out defenders over time, if they can keep Gary Payton II on Devin Booker one-on-one and just force him to fight through screens and not switch, not trap, do nothing else but keep one guy and his focus on Booker, that's a huge advantage for them. And it's up to Booker, I think, because he played badly, ultimately. Offensively, Booker played badly. And a lot of credit goes to Payton because he was playing very well. But if Booker continues to play like that against them, we're finished. There's just no chance that you can win in a 7-game series with Devin Booker playing like that. So it's up to Booker and the Suns to find a way to counter what Payton was doing. And so far, we've seen what it looks like when Devin Booker figures out a defender who gets on him early in games or early in series or early in the season. He tends to figure them out. There's not a lot of players that will lock him down for over the course of an entire season. So we'll see how they react to that. And like you said, the next time the Suns play against him, Payton might be coming off the bench and not starting against Devin Booker, so it might be a different situation throughout the game. It's going to be interesting.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm simply positing that Gary Payton was terrific on defense, whereas there is a chance that Klay Thompson is now a guy that you actually try to get the switch onto because you're targeting him defensively. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying there is the potential, and it remains to be seen, and we'll see when he comes back. But the other thing that I like that you mentioned there is because you're talking about you try to keep Payton into that one-on-one defense because it avoids a situation where he's able to go and do other things. Well, we can apply that to Draymond and what he was doing with Chris Paul as well. The more that Draymond is forced to play up and pressure Chris Paul, as he was doing at the very beginning of the game, the less you can have Draymond in that free safety role that we were talking about earlier. And ultimately, that's a great thing for the Suns because now if it's a great thing for the Suns with a caveat. You need to find the tertiary ball handler who can actually go out and get you offense. But the more that Draymond is preoccupied with Chris Paul, the more that Gary Payton is preoccupied with Devin Booker, well, the less back-end help they have. Now it's basically just Kevon Looney, who's, a pretty good rim protector, but doesn't bring the same intimidation factor. He's a guy that you can attack as long as you have guys who are willing to put the ball on the floor and really get after it.
Right.
So the Suns need to figure a lot of things out with this team. They're the best defense in the league for a reason, but there are holes.
Right.
There are potentially holes. We should transition, I think.
Quickly, though.
Go for it.
What you just said was exactly why about 3/4 of the way through the game, all of a sudden we saw Mikal Bridges pick and roll. Because the defenders that were kind of killing the Suns were on Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Now you have sort of the softer spots of the defense on Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges pick and roll, mid-range shot, score. There needs to be other guys capable of doing that. And to that point, the Suns absolutely have to win the minutes when Steph Curry is off the court, which
there we go.
Right now, they are, except when Cameron Payne is on the court. When Cameron Payne is on the court and Steph Curry is off the court currently, the Suns are losing those minutes. And that is not a recipe to win. Now, a lot of people that were listening to the beginning of this podcast, the 20 minutes that we've talked so far, or whatever it is, are probably shouting about Cameron Payne.
I know. I was thinking
and
about
his 5 turnovers.
Why have they not talked about the real issue, which is campaign? And we were going to get there.
Yeah.
We were always going to get there.
And his 5 turnovers in 5 minutes, or whatever he had in his first 5 minutes of this game. And, truthfully, it's been probably the most disappointing thing for the Suns so far this season in Cameron Payne's play so far. And that hurts because he's an incredibly likable guy and a guy who had some incredible playoff moments for the Suns. And I have some thoughts as to why he's been struggling. I'd love to hear what you think.
First of all, I just want to throw out the stat that I posted on Twitter today. Cameron Payne, just to demonstrate what we're dealing with, the Suns last year with Cameron Payne on the floor had a 116.4 offensive rating. That's per 100 possessions. That is very, very good. It was even better than the offensive rating they had with Chris Paul on the floor last year. So the Suns' offense was actually better with Cam Payne on the floor versus Chris Paul. This year, it has dropped from 116 to 101.6, a 15-point drop. It is 12 points worse than when Cam Payne is off the floor. So Chris Paul is off the floor. Chris Payne. I mean, that's really bad. You like you said, you don't win a series against the Warriors without winning the Steph Curry-less minutes, and you don't win the Steph Curry-less minutes consistently with a backup point guard who runs an offense to the tune of 102 offensive rating. It's putridly bad. There are a lot of issues with Cam right now, and the problem is I don't know what's solvable and what's not solvable. We're 30 games into the season, and I want to be able to say that the shooting slump, we can start there, is just a slump. But the truth is, his catch-and-shoot three-point percentage is down 15% from last year. And maybe it was unattainably high last year. Like last year, he did literally shoot, I think it was 50% on catch-and-shoot threes. So granted, that's he was really, really good. But his catch-and-shoot threes are down 15%. His pull-up threes are down 12%. And so much about Cam, because we know once he gets in, we know he's so fast with his first step. But versatility is not his strength. His bag is not the most vast, we could say. He's only got a couple of moves, if we're being entirely honest. He needs the speed, but more importantly, he also needs the spacing to keep the defense honest. Because if that disappears from his game, well, now they're just going to start to drop back on him as deep as they can and say, come and get it. Because we don't think you're going to pass. We just think you're going to go for the lefty floater over us, and we're willing to live with that shot every time.
Yeah.
So you start with the shooting. Is it just a slump 30 games in? It kind of needs to come back if you really want to have faith in this guy. Like, I think Cam Payne, he's only making $6 million a year. Mm-hmm. I think he's still living up to the contract that James Jones signed him to. Right? Like, we all said, oh, what a steal that was during the summer. And even now, with how disappointed we are in his play, I still think he's living up to that contract. The problem is he needs to be more than just living up to that contract if you really want to win a championship with him as your backup point guard.
Yeah.
So the shooting needs to come back first, and then there's the whole issue of finishing and playmaking. I don't know. Where do you want to start with kind of tackling it?
First, the two-man lineup of Cameron Payne and JaVale McGee has a plus 14.4 net rating so far this season in 286 minutes. So, as much as I want to say Cameron Payne has struggled this year, when him and JaVale McGee are on the floor together, it's working. It's just working. The Suns are killing teams. That's a really high net rating.
But can I say what's funny about that? Or do you have another point?
No, go ahead.
So I feel like we originally approached this topic a week or two ago when we weren't having a full-blown campaign discussion, but we were saying, hey, Cam's struggling. And we said, well, maybe it was the fact that he succeeded with Sharge because the 5-out spacing.
Yes, that is what I was
and it gave him more room to drive. Right. So isn't that data weird?
Yes. Well, here's what I'll say. It's the difference between individual statistics for Cameron Payne and statistics as a team for the Suns in general when the bench is on the floor. Because I do think there is a correlation between the fact that Cameron Payne and his finishing specifically is so much better when he has a spread floor, but it does not necessarily mean that his lower individual shooting has an impact on the bench to the point where the Suns are getting beat consistently. So while I think there is a slight Cameron Payne problem so far this season, I think it's dramatically exacerbated by the matchup against the Warriors than the rest of the season in general. And so, I guess I'll say it this way. We probably should have more of a Cameron Payne conversation later, unless you have more to say about it right now.
I have a little more to say.
Okay, let's hear what you have to say before and then we'll take a break because I want to talk about potential roster upgrades for the Suns as well for this matchup specifically.
So the Payne-JaVale minutes have a 110 offensive rating.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, the Payne-Ayton minutes, and there aren't a ton of them because it's backup and starter, but there are 118 minutes.
There's enough that it's a good sample size.
Not a small amount of minutes. Is a 91.1 offensive rating. And I don't know if you remember, but this was one of the things that I emphasized in the internal development series because we were still broaching the idea of, well, can Cam Payne be a starter in this league? Like a real starter in this league on a team that you have to take seriously one day. And we always said that it would take more development from where he was last year in order to get there. But one of the things that disappointed me, and I brought up these stats from last season at the time, was we never saw him develop chemistry with DeAndre Ayton. And regrettably, I still can't say that we've really seen it at all. Like, I've got the stats here. Ayton has gotten, in 118 minutes with Cam Payne, 6 assists. He's received 6 assists from Cameron Payne. He averages, for reference, for every 8 minutes that DeAndre Ayton plays on the court, shares on the floor with Chris Paul, he gets an assist. 1 assist for Chris Paul to DeAndre Ayton every 8 minutes. For Cameron Payne, that number is 1 assist every 20 minutes, less than half the time. Half the frequency when those two share the floor. And, I mean, on the one hand, and I said this at the time too in our internal development series, you can't hold Cameron Payne to the standard of Chris Paul because that's not fair. He's a different player who plays a different game. He can't just do the thing where he spams mid-range pick and rolls and snakes the pick and roll and then like forces Ayton to get a switch and seal and dumps it off to him. Like that's an easy way for Chris Paul to spam assists to DeAndre Ayton in the post, and Cam Payne can't do that because defenses don't care about his mid-range shot like they do with Chris Paul's, but he's got to find a way. He's got to find a way to work that pick and roll duo so that it's more balanced between the two of them. And it can't just be looking for his own shot all the time and then hoping that the big is there to get the offensive rebound. Because that seems to be what's working with JaVale, but there need to be other options built into the offense if you want it to be a sustainable environment that works in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, you almost look at the way he's playing so far this season, and he's essentially playing like a shooting guard with the ball. And I almost think that there's something, I almost feel like there was something told to him at the beginning of the season about the Suns needing his offense, like as far as scoring goes, that has negatively impacted how he's played so far this season, because the Suns, it seems like they need more of a point guard when he's playing more like a shooting guard. And I think that's something that he can adjust. And look, the shooting-wise, I know you asked that earlier. I don't know. We have a larger sample size of him being a good shooter than him being a terrible shooter. So that is encouraging.
Well, As a Sun, yes.
Yeah, exactly. As a
There's an even larger sample size than that
that's a
of
good
him
point.
being a bad shooter in his career.
That's a good point. So, yeah, we'll see there. By the way, since I have these two-man lineups up, just to point this out, Chris Paul and Cameron Payne sharing the floor together, minus 27.1 net rating.
Oh, my God.
Just
How
hasn't
many
worked.
minutes?
And a not small 108 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And that worked last season. So, maybe there needs to be some more digging as to why that hasn't worked so far this season. I'd be curious to see who they've played with and how that affects the overall numbers there. But let's take a quick break because I think we need to talk about what the Suns could potentially do before the playoffs begin to make the matchup better and more in the Suns' favor against the Warriors. So we'll be right back. All right, before we talk about how the Suns could potentially upgrade their roster, something that people have asked me about and asked us about, why could the Suns not get more shots to DeAndre Ayton in this game? People will constantly talk about, specifically whenever the Suns lose, that DeAndre Ayton should get more shots in any game that the Suns lose, which I think to some extent the Suns do need to get DeAndre Ayton the ball more against the Warriors because DeAndre Ayton played extremely well in the first game against the Warriors, and we saw how that could work. And when he caught the ball in this game, we saw how efficient he was. I think he ended the game with like an 80% field goal percentage. And that hook shot in particular is just unblockable at this point. They're able to get, if they can get that shot, they're able to score the majority of the time. You just rewatched it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on why he did not get as many shots as people would like.
Yeah. I mean, my thoughts aren't going to be that special. I'm sure you remember too, but I think the people who want Ayton to be fed are thinking about kind of those post hook shots that admittedly he was very good on, very efficient on in that Warriors game. But the idea of, you should know by now if you're a Suns fan and you watch every game, the idea of just feeding Ayton over and over again in the post runs completely counter to what the Suns' offensive mission statement is, which is to be unpredictable, not predictable, right? So I think the way that you could have gotten Ayton, the way you would hope to get Ayton more offense in a game like this, the way he gets up to 15, 16, 17 field goal attempts instead of just 10, is if you had the typical lob window open for him that we usually see. Usually we see like 2, 3, 4 attempts on just alley-oops for Ayton throughout the game. I mean, he's a rim runner. That's like his primary function on offense. And the Warriors, credit to them, are just really, really, really good at shutting that down, whether it be through the tagger being able to keep a body on Ayton in the first place, or the nail defender coming onto the ball handler so fast that they have to force a pass out to the perimeter and can't get it over the top, right? So it's just difficult. I mean, I think those people really just want Ayton to be fed like he's Boogie Cousins in the post, and it's just like you're free to vent your frustrations if you see that they're not doing that, which they won't. But that's just not it's not. Monty Williams isn't going to do that.
Yeah,
he's just not. We have never.
It won't work.
We've covered every Monty Williams game in his 10 years as Suns coach. He has never done that with DeAndre Ayton, and I don't suspect he ever will. You want to get him looks in the flow of the offense. We've talked about early possessions. When he gets an early seal on a small, make sure you work the mismatch. But doing it over and over and over again, it's never been their MO.
What you just said is how he scored. The early seals. That's what he did really well in this game. There's two other ways that DeAndre Ayton can score, and that's really it. There's the pick and roll, which I think when the Suns are running a pick and roll with Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton, they bring three guys to basically stop either of those guys from scoring, and that's what stopped the pick and roll scoring. And then there's the third way, which is catching the ball in sort of a higher post position, usually closer to the baseline. And the Suns tried that in the second game against the Warriors, and DeAndre Ayton couldn't score against the Warriors by doing that specific play. So I think that, one, he does need to get more shots. So I'm not going to just outright say that the people that are saying feed Ayton in this scenario are wrong, because I don't believe that they are. I think the Suns need to find better ways to get DeAndre Ayton the ball, but the fact that he can't catch it 18 feet away from the basket and create for himself just makes it incredibly difficult against a team that plays as good of defense as the Warriors.
Right.
Second thing, I do think that, I just want to say one thing for him. I think that the Suns could run more pick and rolls with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, but with the type of sort of Nightcrawler-esque defense that Gary Payton was playing, it happens at the screen. if the screen hits by DeAndre Ayton, if the screen is properly set, and this is not a slip screen because you can't do that against the Warriors, then you can create for DeAndre Ayton or others a lot easier because they can just bring help defense in that scenario. But if the screen doesn't hit and, Gary Payton's just sort of morphing around that screen, that pass becomes essentially impossible for Devin Booker. So it's just really, this team is particularly difficult and game planned very, very well in this game to take that away from DeAndre Ayton, the pick and roll. And without those, that means the seals come, and you can get those seals, but that pass is also really difficult, and there's a timer, essentially, in the paint that you have to get it to him within 2 seconds. Otherwise, 3 seconds is going to be called before he can get the shot up. So that is really particularly difficult. But I do think they need to find ways to get him the ball a little better against the Warriors the next time they play.
Yeah, I think you said it there.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about... So, as much as Payne struggled, I think that this matchup highlights the Suns' need to find another shot creator scorer and even potentially another guy that can play in a small ball lineup that is a capable defender, specifically against the Warriors. Did that stand out to you as well?
I'll be honest, I obviously see the shot creator thing because Cam Payne played so poorly. This did not feel necessarily like a game to me where it was like, oh, Ayton can't hang with these guys.
Right.
He's getting played off the floor. Now, granted, I still think the Suns could use one of those guys, another small ball 5 Torrey Craig type. We've talked about it in an episode a couple weeks ago, I think, when we opened up trade season. But yesterday's game specifically, 2 days ago, did not feel to me like just the best example of, we need that. As much as we need a shot creator. And now here's the problem, Mike. Where do you find the assets to go get both?
Right. Well, I think the main thing that the Suns have is probably a willingness to get rid of up to a few first-round picks if they believe they have a legitimate chance to win the title this season. And I think that's something that they have to actually consider because I think that's worthwhile for a team that's playing as well as they are. Does any name stand out to you in particular? I think the obvious one is Eric Gordon, right? I mean, we talked about him with Dan, our friend Dan, on a recent podcast. Eric Gordon, I think, would make a huge difference. One, we'll just talk about it. He makes threes. The threes that Cameron Payne is missing currently. Two, there's a surprising amount of rim pressure from Eric Gordon. For those who don't watch a lot of him lately, he's still capable of getting by that first line of defense and attacking the rim. And I think capable enough to move the ball if the defense adjusts, which could get the Suns open shots. I think that's probably one of the ones that stands out to me as someone who really would help the Suns in this matchup. What do you think?
I'm just looking at a stat page here to verify what you're saying. 31% of Eric Gordon's field goal attempts are coming between 0 and 3 feet, so basically right at the rim. 31% is the highest mark for him since the 2013-14 season when he was a 25-year-old player with the New Orleans Pelicans. And also that 31%, you compare that to Chris Paul. What is Chris Paul's number in that stat, do you think?
Probably 10%, maybe less.
4%.
Yeah.
4% of Chris Paul's shots are layups. Then you've got, I don't have Cam Payne's page pulled up right here, so I could compare
it's
in a
probably
little
a
bit.
lot. Yeah.
No, look, I mean, I've been iffy about Eric Gordon in the past because I'll be honest, for the past 5 years, I kind of thought he was a guy who still had the reputation of a shooter but couldn't hit shit anymore. But this year, he's hitting his threes. So I haven't been watching Houston Rockets basketball closely enough to know exactly why that is. But if it's for real and you think he would help, then maybe you put in a serious press on going out and getting him because it can't hurt.
Anyone else stand out to you as somebody that could help with this matchup?
Not particularly with the shot creator role.
Can I ask you about Karis LeVert? What do you think about Karis LeVert?
I don't think he would help. Well, I don't think he would help with this.
I don't think either. And it's kind of interesting because I think that in theory, Karis LeVert, who, right, it's not like super, super efficient, but having another creator off the bench that can do a lot of the things that Devin Booker could do could make a huge difference. But for some reason, and I haven't really interrogated this within my own mind, it just doesn't make sense for me in this matchup against the Warriors. And to me, that's kind of all you need to care about at this point. Any roster upgrade the Suns could make needs to come with a focus on the matchup against the Warriors in particular, because no other team, we haven't seen them against the Jazz yet. We'll need to see that first. but no
That'll be
other team.
interesting, but-
No other team should
But-
scare you the way that the Warriors do.
Yeah, and yeah, you're not like no other team in the West scares you. Obviously, we've seen the Lakers at this point; they're frauds. The Nuggets don't scare you because of injuries.
Right.
The Clippers don't scare you because of injuries. And then it's like you go down the line, and Memphis is the 4th seed.
Right.
So credit to Memphis,
Who's been really good, and they're
tonight.
playing tonight.
Yeah, but you don't feel unsafe in that matchup in a playoff setting right now.
Right.
If we're just being
It'd be
frank, everyone's at
it'd
full
be a
strength.
huge disaster if you lost
Yeah.
to the Grizzlies.
If you go in with the team as currently constructed and you lose to Memphis in the playoffs, like that is only on you. That would
Right.
be a disaster scenario. It's only on you.
Right.
But it's not something that you feel like you have to build for right now. So yeah, it really is just the Warriors.
I would love to hear from you guys who are listening. Let us know if there are any specific roster upgrades the Suns could make that are realistic. Try to be as realistic as possible that could help the Suns against the Warriors because, as much as we have some, the hive mind out there is smarter than any individual person. So I would love to hear what you guys think as far as what they could do. Now, we saved this for last, and if you don't want to hear about it, I understand. But before the Christmas Day game, I told you, Sam, the Suns are going to have some guys out from COVID. I literally said the day after Christmas because that's when the NBA decided to test everyone day by day. So every single day, at least through New Year's, the Suns are testing every single day, every player in the NBA now. And I made the assumption that the Suns were missing the wave of COVID just because the NBA was only really testing teams that had guys test positive for, and then they were testing everyone every day. So they weren't really doing that with every team. Now it's hit. And now as we're recording this, it's Jay Crowder, Elfrid Payton, and Monty Williams who's going to miss the game tonight against the Grizzlies and likely out for a week to 2 weeks. It
There
sucks.
will be more.
And there will be more. That sucks, first of all, that it finally hit the Suns, but it's also not a surprise. I mean, mentally, I think we all should have been prepared for this. But what are your thoughts initially, and then we can dig into it a little.
It obviously sucks. It's going to make our analysis pretty useless for the next couple of weeks, and it's going to make some of the basketball that we watch really, really weird for the next couple of weeks. We're doing our next playback stream is Friday against the Celtics. Who knows who's going to be on the roster by then?
Right.
Maybe it's still only Jay Crowder and Elfrid Payton who are out, in which case that would be a pretty fun game. Maybe we're watching Jalen Smith run point by then. I have no idea. So we will see. But in the meantime, obviously the NBA and NBA Players Association came to an agreement recently because of this plethora of players who are out under COVID restrictions that teams can go out and sign guys to sort of emergency provision 10-day contracts now. And so the Suns nabbed their first guy, who you may recognize. They brought back Emmanuel Terry, who played, let's see, I have his page up here somewhere. He played 3 games for the Phoenix Suns during the 2018-2019 season. So he is familiar to James Jones. Not familiar, interestingly, though, to Monty Williams. I think I heard some people say when the signing was announced, which was just a couple hours before we recorded here, oh, well, he knows the playbook. That's Igor Kokoshkov's playbook, actually, that he knows. So I don't think it's such a guarantee that he'll be able to step in and just know exactly what Monty is running. But, so the first of potentially many emergency signings for the Suns here with Emmanuel Terry. What do you think?
Well, first off, who's going to get more minutes, Jalen Smith or Emmanuel Terry? What do you think?
I don't want to answer that question because it might make me sad.
I'm curious to see. Who Monty Williams trusts. I'll be honest. I remember Emmanuel Terry playing for the Suns, and I remember him being kind of okay. And I think you put him in the game with Chris Paul, and he's probably going to catch some lobs. I think.
There are other guys who I would have rooted for, who I would have thought before Emmanuel Terry, though. Like Ray Spalding, I thought played okay for the Suns. It's crazy how we can just name random scrubs, but Jonah Bolden, you remember when Jonah Bolden signed a 10-day contract with the Suns? I thought he played pretty well, but Emmanuel Terry it is, and his G League stats this year for the Stockton Kings, he played 10 games, 25 minutes per game, 11 points, 8 rebounds, just over 1 assist, just over 1 steal, and a block per game. Not a shooter whatsoever is on the scouting report. He's basically just like an energy power forward type who can grab some offensive rebounds and run some pick and rolls and hopefully make some hustle plays.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
if the Suns signing a former Sun, someone who played for the team briefly, is any indication, I think maybe you could consider that Etuan Moore might be back to fill the Elfrid Payton.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Is he with anyone right now?
No, not that I can see.
I'm shocked. I am shocked that no one has signed him to an emergency contract yet.
Yeah, I think that
He's a veteran.
Yeah, and I think he was pretty good. I know that a lot of Suns fans were frustrated with him, but I think they see the difference that, Elfrid Payton, by the way, has played some pretty good defense over the last 5 or 6 games, but just so bad offensively.
Etuan Moore is out because he's actually under contract with the Magic.
Oh, he is?
He has a knee injury, which has kept him out for the season. But he has a contract with the Magic, so that explains it.
Strike that.
He just hasn't played.
I looked at his basketball reference page and I saw 0 games played this season. Well, that makes sense. That explains it.
I have some other ideas for former Suns, though, if you're interested.
Yeah, I would love to.
Because I don't know if you saw him. So Joe Johnson was just signed by the Celtics.
Yeah.
He got a bucket. That was a lot of fun.
Here we go. I know what's coming.
What?
Go
Jamal
ahead.
Crawford.
Jamal Crawford.
No, Jamal Crawford isn't even going to be the one I said. So
people forget that Jamal Crawford was a bucket.
Yeah, they do.
People forget.
Devin Booker would really appreciate that signing in a weird way, I think. I think he would. He's weirdly sentimental about like the hoopers of the NBA.
A lot of NBA players are.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And I bet he and Chris Paul are friends too. But it got me thinking about, why don't you just challenge the Celtics to try and sign the oldest player? Like, I think every team should be using their 10-day contracts to sign a player who is no younger than 38. And give us like a big 3 style. So it got me thinking, who are some former Suns who are still under the age of 40 that you wouldn't expect are still under the age of 40? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Amari Stoudemire.
Yep.
He's 30. He's 39.
Yep. Can the Suns?
Possibility.
Is he still a coach, right?
I have no idea.
I think he's still an assistant.
I thought
coach.
he might have been relieved of because I think he was like not an official assistant coach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a player development. Kind
He'd rather play anyway. He'd rather play.
He did. He was doing for the Nets what Steve Nash used to do for the Warriors. He was like a basketball consultant who like showed up.
Right.
Sometimes.
that sounds.
But
right.
I don't think he was there at every practice.
Yeah.
This one really shocked me. Did you know Boris Diaw is 39?
I did not realize that. No, but that he did seem to just sort of retire and disappear. I imagine Boris Diaw is pushing like 350 pounds right now, right?
Oh yeah. Someone once asked him what his plans were for I forget when.
He wanted to go on a boat, right?
He just wanted to sail the world on his boat
and drink wine,
and cappuccinos.
Which,
and that's
by the
all
way,
he wanted to do.
I mean, come on, that is goals right there. That's definitely a goal.
Yeah, but you spend enough time out at sea, and maybe you want to come back. And yeah, he probably is 100 pounds overweight. But I don't know if anyone's seen him in the past 4 years. Honestly, I just think it would be kind of interesting. Look, if you wanted to go towards the other end, Dragan Bender is still only 24 years old.
Yeah,
his career could start at literally any minute.
Right.
Think about all the guys who their careers don't take off until they're 25 or 26.
That's
true.
true.
If you want to give them one more chance, former Phoenix legends / Victory Cigar for like 3 years for the Suns when they were terrible. Big Sauce Allen Williams.
I love that.
Still only he's 28. There's a lot of options here. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of options.
What about Tyshawn Alexander? What's he doing right now?
That's a good
he's
question.
like he's on a EuroLeague team, right?
Yeah, he might be.
According to this, it's Virtus Bologna. I have no idea how to pronounce these teams.
Is that
NBA? It's the LBA League, Euro Cup League. Look, he'd probably rather play in it's in Italy, so he'd probably rather play in the NBA, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, not necessarily for a 10-day contract. A 10-day contract doesn't pay that well, and sometimes these European contracts.
That's true.
I mean, they don't pay as well as if you could get a minimum contract in the NBA, but they pay better than just I'm going to be here for 20 games for 20 days and then need to leave. So it depends.
Mm-hmm.
One other guy I was thinking maybe if Etuan Moore's not available, could bring Troy Daniels back. He's not signed to an NBA team right now.
Yeah.
He's a guy who Devin Booker seemed to like a lot when he was here. Honestly, I would say Troy Daniels might have been the only actual shooter Devin Booker played with for the first 4 years of his career. And I might honestly, if you had me lay out all the other 60,000 teammates that Devin Booker played with, I might stand by that fact. I'm not sure you could find another 40% three-point shooter on the list.
No, I doubt it. I think you might be right. What a disaster that was. Yeah, it's, there's two things with this. First of all, it's terrible, and the Suns are likely going to lose more guys. And the reality is we're probably going to see some really bad basketball over the next few games. And other teams are hit earlier. And if other teams are hit earlier, that likely means that they're going to have players back and the Suns are going to have players out. So the Suns can lose some significant ground here. But that's why they have some ground to lose. The Suns could lose a few games and still be the second seed of the NBA. And the Warriors have Draymond Green out. Who knows what will happen with them? It's possible that they'll lose a few guys as well. Draymond Green, I don't know, patient zero for this outbreak with the Suns maybe. But that could affect their standings as well. And overall, the Suns could be on the other end of this in the same situation they were in before it, but with a few guys that were sick for a while. So we'll see what happens with them. The other end of it, there are guys that get a chance here, opportunities. And it's possible that teams will find diamonds in the rough here, whether that be the Suns or other teams that may make it to an actual NBA roster sometime soon, and the Suns have spots. So
one former Sun who I've actually hadn't heard his name uttered by anyone in about 3 or 4 years since we drafted him, and appears to be playing pretty well, is Davon Reed. I don't know if you remember him, but he's apparently finding a real niche as a role player for Denver.
Yeah, he was supposed to be one of those shooters that Devin Booker played with.
Yeah, he was. I mean, look, he was a second-round pick. You never expect all that much, but it was supposed to be a long, prototypical 3-and-D type that you could plug in. Didn't work out that one season he played for the Suns. I mean, didn't really get any playing time.
Had some injuries, too.
19 or 20 years old, but hey, now he's 23 or 24. Like I said, I have no idea what he's been up to for the past few years, but Denver fans seem to like him from what I see. So, there will be success stories that come out of this, and I guess that's a small thing to take out of it.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the story with COVID. That's going to be an ongoing story. It's apparently this specific variant is incredibly contagious. So, and you can see the way that it sort of swept through the league, that when one guy gets it on a team, like the Bulls, 10 guys could get it. So that's something that could happen very soon. It's likely that the news has even changed by the time that you're listening to this. The Suns do have a game tonight. We're recording on Monday. They play against the Memphis Grizzlies, who do have Ja Morant back now. And will be incredibly interesting to see how they play with Cameron Johnson in the starting lineup. This is something people have wanted to see. I think that we wanted to talk about it this episode, but Sam, let's see them play with him in the starting lineup, assuming nobody else is out, and come back and talk about it later next week after we see it, because I have some thoughts. My first thought is they need his offense off the bench, but we'll see how it looks with him in the starting lineup so far. Anything else before we get going on this one, Sam?
I think that's all for this one. Stay safe out there.
Yes.
Wishing you the best health and a Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Hopefully you had a good holiday outside of the 2 Arizona teams being incredibly disappointing. We'll be back with a Patreon episode this midweek. And for patrons as well, we'll be calling the game on Friday, New Year's Eve, which is a midday game. It's like at 11 a.m. for
New Year's AM.
Yes, but New Year's AM. So join us for that one. I think that'll be really fun against the Celtics, even if we're calling a bunch of no names on 10 days. Sorry. Good luck to the players that are joining teams this week and soon. Hopefully they make a name for themselves in the NBA. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back soon.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.